Commander Vex. 9 clicked his mandibles in what might have been amusement, if amusement didn't require a sense of humor, which according to his personnel file, he definitely lacked. The Galactic Academy's training facility buzzed with the usual collection of fresh-faced cadets from 17 different species, all eager to prove themselves worthy of serving in the Coalition fleet. "Another batch of meat for the grinder," muttered Sergeant Krill, his forearms methodically checking the training weapons. The Zolonian's voice carried that special blend of cynicism that only came from watching too many eager young beings get themselves killed in spectacularly stupid ways. Vex 9's compound eyes tracked across the assembled cadets. A typical mix, really. 3 Thrari with their crystalline exoskeletons gleaming under the artificial lights. A pair of Moari twins, their tentacles twitching nervously. Several Vrex standing proud and tall, convinced their warrior heritage made them invincible, and unfortunately, 2 humans. "Oh, wonderful." Vex 9 sighed, a sound like steam escaping from a broken pipe. "Hairless apes." The humans stood near the back of the group, looking ridiculously small compared to their alien classmates. The male Lucas Kane appeared to be in his early 20s by human standards. Average height, brown hair, the kind of face that screamed, "I volunteer for dangerous missions." His companion, Maya Torres, was shorter, darker-skinned, with eyes that seemed to catalog every exit and potential weapon in the room. Krill followed Vex's gaze and let out a sound that might have been laughter if it hadn't sounded so much like grinding metal. "Humans? Why do they even bother sending them? Remember what happened to the last batch?" Vaguely, Vex 9's voice dripped with sarcasm. Something about them single-handedly stopping a Crowbar invasion fleet with nothing but determination and improvised explosives? Exactly. Completely unrealistic. Probably just propaganda. The training exercise begins. The training exercise was supposed to be simple. A hostage rescue scenario in a mock space station. The cadets would work in teams to neutralize armed hostiles and extract civilians. Standard stuff, really. What could possibly go wrong? Everything as it turned out. The teams had been assigned randomly, which meant Lucas Kane found himself partnered with Thorak, the Vrex whose idea of stealth involved charging headfirst while roaring at maximum volume. Maya Torres ended up with a Zantari named Zil, 4 and one of the Moari twins, Blob, 7. Yes, that was actually his name. Apparently, Moari parents weren't known for their creativity. "Attention, maggots." Krill's voice boomed across the training deck. "You will enter facility in teams of 3 or 4. Your objective is to rescue the civilian hostages without getting them or yourselves killed. The training weapons are set to stun, but they will hurt like hell and leave you unconscious for several minutes. Try not to embarrass your species too badly." The mock facility was a maze of corridors and rooms populated by holographic hostiles armed with very real stun weapons. The Academy believed in making training as close to actual combat as possible, which explained why the medical bay was always busy. Lucas Kane's team entered through the primary airlock. Thorak immediately proved why Vrex had a reputation for being excellent warriors and terrible strategists by announcing their presence with a war cry that probably violated several noise ordinances. "Subtle," Lucas muttered, checking his weapon's charge, really setting the tone for a stealth mission. The first hostile appeared around a corner, weapon raised. Thorak charged. The hostile fired. Thorak went down like a sack of particularly dense rocks. Well, Lucas said to himself, that lasted longer than I expected. In the observation deck above, Vex 9 and Krill watched the proceedings with the detached interest of beings who had seen this exact scenario play out hundreds of times before. 10 credits the human panics and gets himself stunned within 30 seconds, Krill wagered. "You are on. I give him 45 seconds. Humans are notoriously stubborn about dying. They watched as Lucas dragged Thorak's unconscious form behind cover, then systematically began clearing the corridor with a precision that made Vex 9's mandibles twitch. The human moved like he'd done this before, which was impossible since this was his first combat training exercise. Interesting, Vex 9 mused. The little meat sack appears to have some actual tactical knowledge. Meanwhile, Maya Torres' team was having its own adventures. Zil, for I had discovered that Zantari exoskeletons made excellent bulletproof vests but terrible stealth equipment, Every step sounded like someone dropping a bag of crystals down a metal staircase. Blob. Seven had somehow managed to get himself stuck in a ventilation grate, his gelatinous form proving both an asset and a liability. Could you perhaps make less noise? Maya whispered to Zil, for as they crept down a corridor, "This is quiet for Zantari." Zil, for replied in what might have been a whisper, if whispers normally shatter glass. "Right. Of course it is." Maya had already identified 3 potential hostiles based on shadow patterns and reflected light. She'd also spotted 2 escape routes and calculated the exact angle needed to ricochet a stun blast off the wall to hit someone around a corner. All of this was perfectly normal human behavior. Obviously, I in the observation deck. More instructors had gathered to watch the exercise. Word had spread that there were humans in this batch, and everyone wanted to see what ridiculous, impossible thing they would do this time. "Remember the incident with Cadet Thompson?" asked Lieutenant Gree, his insectoid features twisted into what might have been a smile. "She supposedly took down an entire pirate ship with nothing but a maintenance tool and creative thinking." "Propaganda," Krill insisted. "Has to be. No species is that adaptable." Vex. 9 was beginning to have doubts about that assessment as he watched Lucas Kane systematically dismantle the hostile positions in his sector. The human move with an efficiency that was almost insulting to the carefully designed training scenario. "This is taking too long," announced Training Director Vast Prime, his multiple eyes scanning the displays. "Initiate the complication protocol." Krill's 4 hands hesitated over controls. "Sir, are you sure? The complication protocol is usually reserved for advanced teams." "Do it. Let's see how these soft little primates handle a real challenge." The complication protocol activated additional hostile units, changed the facility's layout, and introduced a time-sensitive element to the scenario. What had been a manageable rescue operation suddenly became a nightmare of shifting objectives and overwhelming odds. Lucas Kane was pinned down in a maintenance shaft when the first additional wave of hostiles arrived. His weapon had 12 shots remaining, and he could count at least 15 heat signatures converging on his position. Thorak was still unconscious, sprawled in what could generously be called a defensive position, but was more accurately described as an inconvenient obstacle. Well, Lucas said to himself, checking the remaining charge in his weapon, "This is about to get interesting." That was when the shooting started in earnest. The hostiles had clearly decided that subtlety was overrated and began firing indiscriminately down the corridor. Lucas pressed himself against the wall, feeling the heat from near misses, and began calculating angles and trajectories with the kind of mathematical precision that would have impressed his academy instructors if they weren't currently trying to kill him. In Maya Torres' sector, things had gone from complicated to completely insane. Blob 7 had finally extracted himself from the ventilation system only to land directly on top of a hostile unit. Zil, for was using his natural armor to provide cover, while Maya systematically picked off targets with shots that shouldn't have been possible given the angles involved. "How is she making those shots?" demanded Instructor Beta, her tentacles writhing in confusion. "The targeting computer says those trajectories are impossible." "Humans don't believe in impossible," Vex. 9 replied, his voice carrying a note of something that might have been respect. "They just haven't found the right angle yet." A real casualty. The situation deteriorated rapidly when one of the training weapons malfunctioned. Instead of firing a stun blast, it discharged a full-power energy bolt that punched the mock facility's wall like it was made of paper. The shot caught Lucas Kane's center mass, sending him flying backward into a bulkhead with sound that made everyone in the observation deck wince. "Medical team to training deck 7. Vex 9 announced, his voice carrying across the facility. "We have a real casualty." But before the medical team could reach the scene, something happened that will be talked about in academy training facilities for decades to come. Maya Torres appeared at the breach in the wall. She was covered in blood, human blood, and she was dragging something behind her. It took several seconds for the observers to realize that what she was dragging was Lucas Kane's head, still attached to his body, but only barely. "Holy mother of cosmic horror," whispered Krill, his forearms going limp. "Is he breathing?" Maya announced, her voice carrying clearly through facility's communication system. "Barely, but breathing." and really, really angry about being shot. She looked up at the observation deck, her eyes finding Vex 9's compound gaze through the reinforced transparent aluminum. Training exercise over, I assume? Lucas Kane's body twitched, then moved. Somehow, impossibly, the human was trying to sit up, despite having been hit with enough energy to vaporize a small asteroid. Oh, that, announced training director Vast Prime, is not medically possible. Maya smiled, an expression that contained absolutely no humor whatsoever. You clearly haven't spent much time around humans. The medical team finally arrived, led by Chief Medical Officer Vex 9, whose extensive experience with alien physiology had prepared him for many things, but human stubbornness was not one of them. Patient is conscious and responsive, Maya reported, her voice clinically precise. Severe energy burns across the chest cavity, possible internal bleeding, and what appears to be a really bad attitude about the whole situation. Lucas Kane opened his eyes, looked around at the assembled medical team, and said the words that would become legend in academy training circles. Did I pass? Vex 9 felt something he hadn't experienced in his 47 years of military service. It might have been respect. It could have been fear. It was definitely indigestion. Get them both to medical, he ordered. And someone find out exactly what species of insanity we are dealing with here. As the medical team carefully extracted Lucas Kane from the training facility, Maya Torres walked alongside them, still covered in his blood, still carried herself like someone who had just completed a routine exercise rather than witness what should have been a fatal training accident. Training Director Vast Prime watched them go, his multiple eyes tracking their progress down the corridor. Make a note in their files, he instructed. These two are not to be assigned to routine training exercises. What classification should I use, sir? Asked Krill. Vast Prime considered this for a long moment. Humans, he said finally. Just humans. The word carried weight in academy circles. It was a kind of classification that made instructors check their equipment twice and medical teams stock extra supplies. It was a classification reserved for beings who refused to acknowledge the basic laws of physics when those laws became inconvenient. As the training deck slowly returned to normal, Vex 9 found himself staring at the breach in the wall where the malfunctioning weapon had fired. The edges were still glowing from the heat of the energy discharge. No being should have survived that kind of hit, especially not a soft, fragile human. Sir, Krill's voice interrupted his thoughts. Should we continue with the exercise? Vex 9 clicked his mandibles, the sound echoing in the sudden quiet of the training facility. No, he said finally. I think we have learned quite enough for one day. In the medical bay, Lucas Kane was arguing with the medical team about the necessity of remaining in bed for observation, not about treatment. Mind you, he was arguing about the quality of the hospital food. This nutritional paste tastes like someone dissolved a boot in synthetic chemicals, he complained, poking at the gray substance with what appeared to be genuine scientific curiosity. What did you do? Run it through a matter disintegrator twice. Chief Medical Officer Vex 9's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a sure sign of mounting frustration. But that is a perfectly balanced meal designed to provide optimal nutrition for recovering patients across 17 different species. Yeah, well, it tastes like despair mixed with industrial lubricant. Maya Torres snorted with laughter from her chair beside the medical bed. She had changed into a clean uniform, but somehow still managed to look like someone who had recently been involved in a violent incident. It was a talent, really. The human survived a direct hit from a malfunctioning energy weapon. Vex 9 muttered his assistant, a nervous Moari named Squish 2, and he is complaining about the food. Standard human behavior, sir. Squish 2 replied, checking his notes. According to medical database, food complaints are the 3rd most common human response to trauma, right after inappropriate humor and demanding to know what happened to their stuff. In the Academy's administrative section, an emergency meeting was in progress. Training Director Vast Prime sat at the head of a conference table, surrounded by instructors, medical personnel, and several beings whose job titles were classified, but whose presence suggested this incident had attracted attention from very high places. Let me understand this correctly, said a voice from the wall-mounted communication screen. The speaker remained off camera, but the voice carried the kind of authority that made star systems rearrange their borders when it asked politely, "A first-year human cadet survived a direct hit from an energy weapon that should have vaporized him?" "That is correct," Director Vast Prime replied, trying to keep his voice steady. "The weapon malfunctioned and discharged at full military power rather than training intensity. And the other human extracted him from the training facility in 23 seconds?" "Also correct." There was a long pause from the communication screen. Finally, the voice spoke again, carrying what might have been amusement. How delightfully typical. "Commander Vex." Nine shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "Sir, with respect, there was nothing typical about what we witnessed. The male human should be dead. The female human moved through that facility like she had architectural blueprints memorized. Commander, how long have you been stationed at the Academy?" 12 years, sir." "And in those 12 years, how many human cadets have you observed?" Vex 9's mandibles clicked as he accessed his memory files. "Approximately 47, sir." "And how many of those 47 have done something that your instructors initially classified as impossible?" The silence in the room stretched long enough to become uncomfortable. Finally, Vex 9 answered, "All of them, sir." "Exactly." The voice from the speaker carried a note of satisfaction. "Gentlemen, what you witnessed today was not an anomaly. It was simply humanity. Never underestimate humans. Ever, ever." The words, penned by training director Vast Prime in his final report on the incident, resonated to the Galactic Academy. Back in the medical bay, Lucas Kane had progressed from complaining about the food to examining his own medical readouts with the kind of intense focus usually reserved for deciphering ancient alien texts. "These numbers can't be right," he announced, holding up a scanner display. "According to this, my cellular regeneration rate is operating at 400% of baseline human normal." Vex 9 glanced at the readings, and his expression suggested he was seriously considering early retirement. "That is correct," he confirmed. "Your body is healing at a rate that should be medically impossible." Lucas considered this information with the same casual interest most beings reserve for weather reports. That explains why I feel like I could run a marathon instead of lying here eating processed sadness." Maya Torres leaned forward in her chair, her expression suddenly sharp. "Doc, you said the weapon discharged at full military power?" "Approximately 7.4 gigajoules of directed energy," Vex 9 confirmed. "Enough to breach the hull of a small spacecraft. And Lucas took that hit center mass? A direct impact to the chest cavity." "Yes." Maya turned to look at Lucas, who was now attempting to convince a medical scanner that he was perfectly healthy. "Thank you very much." "You magnificent, stubborn idiot," she muttered affectionately. "I prefer resilient or devastatingly handsome," Lucas replied without looking up from the scanner. "But I will accept magnificent idiot as a working compromise." The medical bay's emergency alert system suddenly activated, bathing everything in red light and filling the air with a sound like mechanical screaming. Vex 9's 4 eyes went wide as he read the incoming message. "All personnel to emergency stations," announced the Academy's central computer. "This is not a drill. Hostile vessels have been detected approaching the system. All cadets report to designated safe zones immediately." Lucas Kane was off the medical bed and reaching for his uniform before Vex 9 could object. "Finally," he said, pulling on his shirt despite the medical officer's protests, "I was getting bored." "You are not cleared for duty," Vex 9 insisted. "You suffered massive trauma less than 4 hours ago." "I feel fine." Lucas turned to Maya, who was already checking her sidearm. "You ready for some actual excitement?" "Always." Maya's smile was the kind that made experienced soldiers check their insurance policies. "Let's go see what's trying to kill us today." They left the medical bay at a run, ignoring Vex 9's increasingly frantic protests about medical clearances and proper discharge procedures. Behind them, the chief medical officer stared at the empty bed, then at his medical scanner, then at the readings that showed impossible cellular regeneration rates. "I need a vacation," he announced to the empty room. "Somewhere with absolutely no humans." An impossible defense. The Academy's defense center was controlled chaos when Lucas and Maya arrived. Hundreds of beings rushed between stations, checking weapon systems, coordinating with fleet elements, and generally trying to look like they knew what they were doing. Commander Vex, 9, stood at the central command station, his compound eyes tracking multiple displays simultaneously. "Cadet Kane, you are supposed to be in medical," he announced without turning around. "Medical discharge me," Lucas replied, which was technically true if you considered leaving while the doctor was distracted to be the same as being discharged. "And I suppose Cadet Torres just happened to be in the area?" "I go where the action is," Maya said, studying the tactical displays. "What are we looking at?" "Vex." 9 finally turned to face them, his expression suggesting he was reconsidering his career choices. 3 Krovar assault ships approaching at maximum burn. They will be in weapons range in approximately 47 minutes. Krovar? Lucas's voice carried genuine interest. The same Krovar that supposedly invaded the Terran colonies last year? The same Krovar that a single human destroyer allegedly defeated using nothing but creative thinking and improvised tactics. "Vex," 9 replied, his tone suggesting he still didn't believe those reports. Maya and Lucas exchanged a look that made several nearby instructors suddenly nervous. "What kind of defensive capabilities does the Academy have?" Maya asked, studying the tactical display with the focused attention of someone planning something potentially catastrophic. "Standard planetary defense grid." "Vex," 9 replied cautiously. "Energy weapons, missile platforms, fighter squadrons." "Why?" "Just curious." Maya's tone was the kind of casual that made smart people start backing toward the exits. "Lucas, remember that thing we talked about during theoretical tactics class? The completely hypothetical scenario that Instructor Gree said was impossible." "That's the one." "Vex." 9 felt his mandibles begin clicking involuntarily. "What hypothetical scenario?" Lucas grinned, and for the first time since the training accident, he looked completely healthy. Maya had this idea about using a training facility's holographic projectors to create false sensor readings. Make it look like the Academy has defensive capabilities it doesn't actually possess. That would require accessing classified defense protocols. "Vex," 9 said slowly, and reconfiguring the holographic systems beyond their design parameters. "Hypothetically," Maya added helpfully, "and even if such a thing were possible, which it is not, it would require someone with intimate knowledge of Krovar sensor technology, hypothetically." "Vex," 9 stared at them for a long moment. In his 12 years at the Academy, he had learned to recognize the expression humans got when they were about to do something that would either save everyone or get them all killed. Usually both. "How long would you need?" he heard himself asking. 20 minutes, Lucas replied immediately. "Maybe 15 if Maya can access the defense grid's targeting computers." "I can do that," Maya said with the confidence of someone who had never met a computer system she couldn't convince to do what she wanted. "This is insane." "Vex," 9 announced the room in general. "I am about to authorize 2 first-year cadets to attempt a completely theoretical defense strategy against a proven enemy force." Sergeant Krill approached the command station, his forearms laden with data tablets. "The Fleet Response Force is still 6 hours out. We have 3 squadrons of training fighters and a defensive grid that was designed for training exercises, not actual combat." "Vex," 9 looked at the tactical display, where 3 red icons representing Krovar assault ships continued their inexorable approach toward the Academy. He looked at his available resources, which consisted primarily of student pilots and training equipment. Then he looked at Maya Torres and Lucas Kane, who were watching him with the kind of patient attention that suggested they were already planning their unauthorized mission, whether he approved it or not. "Do it," he said finally, "and may whatever deities you humans worship have mercy on us all." 23 minutes later, the Krovar fleet entered weapons range of the Academy's defensive perimeter. What they found waiting for them was completely impossible. According to their sensors, the Academy was protected by a defensive grid that included 12 heavy cruisers, 47 fighter squadrons, and enough firepower to reduce a small moon to component atoms. The sensor readings were absolutely clear, completely consistent, and totally false. Crovar lead vessel is requesting communication, announced the communications officer, Thrari, whose crystalline structure was practically humming with nervous energy. Put them through, Vex 9 ordered. The main screen flickered to life, revealing the bridge of a Crovar assault ship. The captain was a typical Crovar, which many looked like someone had crossed a particularly aggressive lizard with a small mountain. His scales were scarred from countless battles, and his eyes held the kind of intelligence that made him extremely dangerous. Academy Station. The Crovar captain spoke in accented but clear galactic standard. I am Captain Throck, 7 of the Crovar Defense Fleet. You will surrender immediately or be destroyed. Vex 9 stepped forward, his compound eyes meeting the Crovar's gaze. Captain Throck, 7. This is Commander Vex 9 of the Galactic Academy. I'm afraid surrender is not an option. Throck 7's expression suggested he was genuinely puzzled. Commander, our sensors indicate your defensive capabilities are considerable, but you are an academy, not a military installation. Why do you possess such firepower? In the holographic control center, Maya Torres and Lucas Kane worked with the focused intensity of master craftspeople. Maya's fingers danced across control interfaces she technically wasn't authorized to access, while Lucas monitored the false sensor readings they were broadcasting to the Crovar fleet. They are buying it, Lucas announced quietly. Crovar sensors are reading exactly what we want them to read. Good, Maya replied, not looking up from her work. Now comes the interesting part. On the main screen, Captain Throck, 7 was consulting with his bridge crew. Vex 9 could hear fragments of their conversation, and the tone suggested they were having serious doubts about attacking what appeared to be a heavily fortified position. Commander, Throck 7 spoke again, his voice carrying a note of respect that hadn't been there before. Perhaps we can reach an understanding. The Crovar fleet has no quarrel with the Academy itself. I'm listening, Vex 9 replied, though he had no idea what he was supposed to be listening for. We seek information about human defensive capabilities. Recent encounters with Terran forces have been educational. We would be willing to withdraw in exchange for technical data. Maya Torres looked up from her control station, her expression suddenly dangerous. Did he just ask us to hand over information about human military capabilities? That appears to be the case, Lucas replied, his own expression hardening. How rude. Extremely rude. Maya turned back to her controls, her fingers moving with new purpose. I think it's time we gave Captain Throck 7 a proper demonstration of human defensive capabilities. What are you doing? Lucas asked, though his tone suggested he already knew and approved, showing him exactly what happens when you threaten humans. Maya's smile was sharp enough to cut vacuum. Activating Defense Protocol Omega. There was no Defense Protocol Omega. Maya had just invented it approximately 30 seconds ago. But what happened next would be discussed in military academies across the galaxy for decades to come. Every sensor on every Crovar ship suddenly detected the impossible. The Academy's defensive grid, which had appeared formidable before, now registered as absolutely overwhelming. The reading suggested enough firepower to reduce the entire Crovar fleet to elementary particles, and the targeting systems indicated that every weapon was locked onto Crovar vessels with the kind of precision that left no room for evasive maneuvers. Captain Throck 7's expression shifted from confidence to concern to what might have been terror. Commander, our sensors are reading weapon signatures that should not be possible. Captain, Vex 9 replied, his voice carrying new authority. You asked about human defensive capabilities. Allow me to clarify something for you. This academy trained beings from across the galaxy, but it was designed by humans. The defensive systems you are currently detecting represent approximately 0.01% of actual human military technology. This was, of course, complete nonsense, but Captain Throck 7 didn't know that. Furthermore, Vex 9 continued, warming to his theme. I have 2 human cadets currently managing our defensive operations. They are first-year students. Would you like to know what our advanced students are capable of? On the Crovar Bridge, several officers were now frantically checking and rechecking their sensor readings. The numbers they were seeing suggested that attacking the Academy would result in the complete annihilation of their fleet within approximately 15 seconds. "Commander!" Captain Throck Seven's voice had acquired a distinctly respectful tone. "The Krovar fleet withdraws. Please extend our apologies to your human cadets for any misunderstanding." "I will do that, Captain. Safe travels." The communication ended, and the three red icons on the tactical display began moving away from the Academy at maximum burn. Within minutes, they had jumped to hyperspace and vanished from the sensor grid entirely. The Defense Center erupted in cheers from beings representing 17 different species. A new path. Maya Torres and Lucas Kane emerged from the holographic control center, looking like students who had just completed a particularly challenging homework assignment. Well, Lucas announced the room in general. That was educational. Commander Vex. 9 stared at them for a long moment, then began what sounded like laughter, but might have been the early stages of a nervous breakdown. "Kane and Torres, report to my office immediately." "Are we in trouble?" Maya asked, though her tone suggested she wasn't particularly concerned about the answer. "That depends." "Vex," 9 replied. "How do you feel about skipping the rest of your first year and moving directly to advanced tactical operations?" Lucas and Maya exchanged a look that contained an entire conversation. Finally, Lucas shrugged. "Sounds interesting. Do we get better food in advanced classes?" "I will personally ensure that the Academy's nutritional systems are upgraded to human standards," Vex, 9 said. "In that case," Maya said with a grin that suggested she was looking forward to whatever came next, "we accept." As the Defense Center slowly returned to normal operations, Training Director Vass Prime updated his final report on the incident. Under the section marked Lessons Learned, he wrote a single line: "Never underestimate humans. Ever. Ever." In the Academy's medical bay, Chief Medical Officer Thex 9 was still staring at Lucas Kane's medical readouts when his assistant approached with a data tablet. "Sir, we have received orders to establish a dedicated human medical research division." "Why?" Thex 9 asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. "The command wants to understand how human physiology allows them to survive things that should kill them." Thex 9 looked at the readings one more time, then at the empty medical bed where a human cadet had argued about food quality while recovering from what should have been a fatal injury. "Put in a request for additional medical staff," he said finally, "and find out if there is such a thing as hazard pay for treating humans." 3 months later, Maya Torres and Lucas Kane graduated from the Academy's Advanced Tactical Program with the highest marks in the institution's history. They were immediately assigned to the Coalition Fleet Special Operations Division, where their first mission involved infiltrating a heavily fortified enemy position using nothing but determination and improvised tactics. The mission was classified as impossible by 3 separate intelligence agencies. They completed it in under 6 hours, but that, as they say, is another story entirely.